9-7. Bust a bus.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Hersey Hoops' latest original podcast production, The Network, Season 2, which features interviews with Hersey basketball alums across a variety of careers and majors to highlight the connection between interscholastic athletics and career achievement. We hope the network can serve as a bridge between our alumni's experiences in high school basketball with that of their professional successes. The Network podcast is brought to you today by the Happiness Project, developed and founded by 2019 Hersey grad Jake Lavin. After a fellow student committed suicide and having had multiple friends with depression and anxiety, Lavin thought enough was enough, so he used the Happiness Project to help out in any way possible. From there, the Happiness Project was born, and their goal is to spread love and happiness through clothing alone. The Happiness Project now has over 61,000 followers on Instagram. Visit happinessmerch.com to purchase your items, and 15% of the profits go towards mental health research. Or if you're a Hersey grad, just DM Jake. I'm sure he'll give you something for free. So last, subscribe to @HerseyHoops on Twitter or Instagram for live episodes of the network, which can also be found on YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Another honor and privilege to welcome our 8th overall guest in the second of Season 2 of the network, 2011 Hersey grad and former Jim Thomas Memorial Scholarship recipient, Tom Sutrinaitis, who is currently a private banker at JP Morgan and a former football student athlete at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park, where he majored in psychology and economics and graduated on the dean's list. Wow. Heck of a resume. Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll jump right into it. First of all, your academic background and just reading it is a mouthful, speaks for itself. Bachelor's from U of C in psych and econ, two demanding areas of study in college. How, if at all, were the seeds for your academic excellence kind of cultivated or inspired during your time at Hersey? Obviously, to get into U of C, you had to have quite an academic transcript. But how are you able to parlay your intelligence and your academic pursuits in the classroom with your love of athletics, specifically football, at Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of started at Hersey, and even before that in the feeder programs with basketball and whatnot. I come from a Lithuanian immigrant family. So my parents came over to the United States in 1984, I believe it was, without knowing a single person here and without knowing the language, and just kind of chasing the American dream and seeing what it's all about. And happened to provide for us the opportunity to work our asses off and try to figure out if we can do something over here. And luckily, I got plenty of those opportunities to start charging forward at Hersey, where I got involved in as much as I could because it was just fun. I had a great time at Hersey and challenged me in different ways. I was up most hours of the day doing anything from athletics to keeping up with classwork and everything. But I had a drive from my parents that they instilled in me from what they took to get over here and all the challenges that they'd gone through. So I felt somewhat obligated to try my best and succeed. And that kind of translated into basketball and football at Hersey. And then luckily got the opportunity to do the same thing, playing football and studying at the University of Chicago. So that's kind of how it all wrapped up over there.
Very interesting. So did you guys have a bilingual household in which you spoke Lithuanian and English, or kind of how did that work?
Yeah, very much so. My mom would drive us probably an hour and a half each way to Cicero and back on Saturdays for us to go to Lithuanian school. So I didn't have the typical growing up and having my full weekends available to me, which at the time I was kicking and screaming because I didn't want any part of going to Lithuanian school. But it gave me the opportunity to connect with my family, who's all living in Lithuania right now, and my cousins are starting to spread out, here and there. Like I've got cousins who were in the UK for a while, cousins in Germany. So they're starting to mobilize a little bit, but without going to Lithuanian school on Saturdays for the better part of like a dozen years, I wouldn't know the language and the history and the culture of where my parents came from. And we're very much so a bilingual house. I think my dad's probably 90% Lithuanian at home and 10% English. So it's still very, very much so at the forefront.
Good, good. And then,
Yeah.
so did you take psych and econ both in high school, or were those kind of passions that you cultivated in college? Did you take both those classes at Hersey? And if so, who were your teachers? Do you remember?
Wow.
I know I'm asking you to go into the 9-year archive here.
Well, I remember taking Cat Soc in high school, which was Mr. Mix at the time. And that was a great class. And that kind of was where the social science interest came from. And obviously UC's got a pretty good economics program. So
Yeah,
figured that,
it's okay.
so I figured that was a good route to pursue. But no, I've always had a really big interest in psychology ever since I took AP Psych at Hersey, which now I'm kicking myself because I can't remember my teacher's name, but she was an incredible teacher at Hersey and was the reason I was interested in psychology in the first place.
You know who it might have been? I think she might be at Prospect now. Is it Miss A with the long last name?
Yes, sure was.
So she was actually at Prospect when I arrived at Hersey, but I've heard, a variety of stories like that. I would try her last name, but I'd butcher it.
Right. Well, you got mine.
Yeah, exactly. So aside from, your formal education at U of C and then the Quantic School of Business and Technology where you received your MBA, you're now involved with what is called the Y Combinator, which creates a new model for funding early stage startups. Twice a year, they invest a small amount of money, about $150K, in a large number of startups. Talk to us a little bit about how this works and what type of projects you've been involved with and what you're looking for in terms of your investment. I think so many kids in the high school environment now want to create their own job or create their own product. And obviously, as somebody who looks into funding these startups in a new way, what are you looking for and what type of projects have you been involved with?
Yeah, great question. So I've been working on an MBA degree from Quantic over the last couple of months. It's a year-long program that's entirely online based, and there's a good international cohort of students that I'm doing this with. But that's going to take place over the course of this year, and I'm kind of marrying that with Y Combinator's program, which what they have going on over there, in addition to being an accelerator for startups where they're looking for good ideas and looking to fund them in different ways. They have this program that's relatively new called the Future Founders Track, for people who have ideas and potentially want to think about starting their own business, but want to get a little bit more formalized around what to be thinking about in terms of how to come up with the right idea, how to test that idea, who should my co-founders be, if any, and why, and kind of start to put those pieces together so that you can kind of hit the ground running if and when an idea pops up. And I've had some ideas of what I want to work on and what I might think about starting based on the work that I'm doing in the private bank. But it's just an opportunity for me to continue learning, which is something that's important to me, and an opportunity to see if I can pursue my entrepreneurial spirits a little more here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think anybody, that's achieved the level of academic success that you have, it's not like you get to that point and then stop with your, college diploma. I think lifelong learners in any field continue to go after it and learn new things and expand your careers in new ways. And that's certainly what that sounds like. Obviously in the thick of a global pandemic, econ and psych are two fields that are at the forefront of not just, specific conversations, but the national conversation as well. People are beginning to understand how the economic impact of the pandemic is causing them to have a more visceral interest in human psychology. And being as well studied as you are in each field, how do you see 2020 changing us positively when it comes to economics and our understanding of human psychology? So this is kind of an application question of your degrees in the context that we're in now.
It's been a hell of a year, obviously. and one that is changing the way that we interact and work, probably permanently going forward. I mean, probably didn't think before this year that you'd be setting up these podcasts via a Zoom call, but here we are. and it's kind of the idea of being comfortable with the uncomfortable is probably where a lot of people are either figuring out or still working through. But especially for older generations, the technological adaptation to the new world has always been the big gap to overcome. And what we've seen more than anything is that when push comes to shove, if need be, you can adapt and overcome whatever circumstance you have in front of you. And it's pushed from what I've heard from CEOs from Airbnb to Microsoft and other large companies that JP Morgan talks to pretty frequently. We've probably jumped ahead a decade in terms of technological adaptation and evolution in a matter of a year. Because otherwise, the food delivery startup area is something that wouldn't have seen as much growth based on where projections were before coronavirus hit and everything. And e-learning that's going on is completely new segment of the market that probably didn't exist as much before everyone was forced to go into technological fields like this. So I mean, it's still shaping the way that we work and interact with each other every day, and comes with positives and negatives. But I mean, that's part of the fun and the challenges that come with this.
Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, the education field specifically, it has been uncomfortable in a lot of different ways, teaching remotely, but it has made so many teachers so much more adaptable and flexible and willing to try technology that otherwise would have been on the back burner in so many different situations. And as you mentioned, the food industry, everybody trying to adapt to survive has caused them to progress. And that's a human mindset too, to see the positives in that. Obviously, there's a lot of things everybody can complain about 2020 and how that's uprooted so much of what we saw as normal. But I think you have to look at some of the positive areas it's helped us grow societally and culturally as well.
Yeah. I was going to add, aside from any kind of economic changes or developments on this front, I just think that if people were starting to feel or kind of take for granted the human interactions that they get with either their family or friends, I think that's regrounded everybody hopefully in a feeling of gratitude for the opportunities that they get to interact with each other and be with each other in person, because as of right now, it's harder and harder to do so. But I think everybody's feeling how critically important it is to their own well-being to be able to have a network to rely on like that.
Totally. And, I think it's at a time period in American society when it was easy to be distracted, whether it was by devices or television or whatever the case is. Just being thankful for interpersonal contact is something that we probably needed. And it came in an unfamiliar form, but, it could be a helpful form as well. Awesome. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. You're a proud descendant of Lithuanian heritage. How in any way has your ethnic identity shaped your career path in terms of going into, banking, economics, psychology, all those different things that kind of made up who you are and your identity now? How has your Lithuanian heritage kind of provided the foundation for that?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the kind of the stuff I talked about with my parents before, I mean, basketball itself is kind of a second religion in Lithuania, more or less. And it was that love for the game that brought me all the way to where I was playing basketball at Hersey, and then was even considering trying to do two sports in college and try to play football and basketball at UC, but seemed like a lot with what I wanted to accomplish at UChicago. But it's an interesting thing because I'm trying to reconnect and connect with my heritage in different ways now. Like I'm a member of Global Lithuanian Leaders, which is a club that's dedicated to networking and connecting folks with a similar background as mine and seeing who else is out there and what connections can be made. And I'm pretty excited for the Bulls this year, especially because the new executive VP of basketball operations for them is a guy that happened to play on the 1992 Lithuanian Dream Team, the other Dream Team, quote unquote. And he played at Seton Hall, but he's a Lithuanian immigrant himself and is now at the helm of the Bulls operation. So I'm excited to see where he can go with that. And he hired Billy Donovan recently. So it looks like one step in the right direction, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good. Now I have to ask, just from like a linguistic standpoint, with surnames, is ITIS, that suffix, always Lithuanian for last names?
Not always. I get Greek is the most common name that or ethnicity that people think my last name
Greek
is.
is more OUS though, I thought, right?
Right, in a lot of cases. But there's like Sabonis is just kind of out there. There's Jaravicius, who was
with the Giants.
Right. Yeah, he played with the Giants and the Rams for a while. So there's different forms that it takes, but if you see ITIS, it's a safe bet it's either Greek or Lithuanian, one of the two.
Okay, interesting. Because I'm learning, at Hersey with their kind of ethnic enrollment as well. There's WSKYs, which is pronounced like, I had Matt Hanaszewski and Jacob Klasuski on the same team.
Right.
One was Polish, one was Ukrainian. So it's like I'm learning more about last names, kind of like with every senior class that graduates, which is interesting. Definitely,
yeah, all right.
Something I didn't know. So, all right, walk us through some of the necessary requirements of private banking at JP Morgan. Like what kind of decisions are you tasked with on a daily basis, and what knowledge are you relying on to effectively benefit your customers' financial profile, especially in such a unique time period? So whether it's math, science, reasoning, logic, your ability to write and read fluently at a high level.
It's all those things and more, which is why it's fun. It's what private banking is really running the gamut of wealth management options for my particular set of clients is private business owners who eventually transition away from a successful business exit and now have means and liquidity with which to invest, plan around, donate to charities of various kinds, bank with us, lend with us. So there's a lot of different components that can go into a relationship like that. But at the end of the day, it's a personal business because I'm dealing with a family's assets, and the two most personal things in somebody's life are their health and their wealth. And so there's a lot of psychology that gets rooted into that based on their experience with investing and how they think about money, which comes from their parents usually. And there's different decision points of when they want to start talking to their kids about wealth and how what kind of forms that takes and how involved they want their kids to be in those conversations. So I help with nearly all of that, and it can take all different kinds of forms, from just being a simple banking provider to helping them manage investments of various kinds, to connecting them to other parts of the bank if they're interested in working with another business or potentially want to sell a business to a different part of our bank. So there's a whole lot that goes into it, but it kind of blends into a nice mix of my studies, which were econ and psychology, and it's a good it sits right in between there, which is the sweet spot of what I've studied and why I enjoy it so much now.
Perfect. And then I have a quick advisory question for you. Obviously, there's a class of seniors in 2021, and then each class down the road evaluating college decisions, in-state versus out-of-state, private versus public, and all these universities and colleges come with sticker prices. Obviously, some are big and expansive, and some do their best to be affordable. What advice would you give to a high school student planning to prepare for affording college, maybe without the entire expense being paid for by their parents?
Phew. Yeah, that's obviously a tough question because I think everyone's seeing the direction that college prices are going, and it seems to be one directional as of right now. Honestly, I would try to focus on if kids have an interest in knowing exactly what they want to study, figure out what schools do that well and focus on that and figure out what might be affordable by talking with your parents, talking with the student advisory council that you guys have at school, and the college readiness teams and programs that you guys have at Hersey, and kind of weigh your different options. I mean, I know just as many people that started out at community college for a couple of years at Harper because it made more sense financially to start there and then transfer to a college that they wanted to go to be able to better afford it. And it only serves them better to be a little more free financially coming out of college and having studied exactly what you want. So it's a little mix of both, but starts with having conversations with your parents, having conversations with your counselors, and figuring out what's realistic and what you want to achieve at the next level.
Totally. And I think, in my conversations with seniors, it's so often, everybody's undecided at first. But eventually, at some point, you do become decided, and then you want to be at the right place that parlays that interest with whatever, socially or athletically you're doing at the school, which is what you alluded to, obviously, as well. All right.
And I think everybody kind of goes into school a little undecided, but after having gone through college for 4 years, I can bet you, if you told the kid to think about the two or three things that they found most interesting at school or that they want to continue thinking about and learning, every kid should be able to name a few of those things, and those are passions of theirs that they may or may not know that they have, and they should continue to pursue those.
Yeah, and I think that the main ingredient is kids need to take time to sit down and think honestly what their interests are and what their intelligences are, whether it be writing or communicating with people interpersonally or selling or advertising. And I think, more and more as education opens up into technology in a variety of fields, kids aren't having those individual conversations with themselves, which I think is, a shortcoming in a lot of ways, but definitely something that is a priority.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll let you off on an easy one here for your last one. What are some of your favorite athletic memories from your time at Hersey, football or basketball? And then how has being a part of those teams inspired the way you approach collaboration and problem solving in your vocational career?
Well, I can answer the second part first. I mean, teamwork is a lifelong skill, and it's at the core of what we do as human beings. Nobody lives in isolation. So the time that I had at Hersey playing basketball and football was building the foundation for me to be able to work with other people successfully and try to think about how to work best as a team, because it's all about the team at the end of the day. And without everybody's individual successes, the team as a whole can't come together and win. So, it's become core to who I am as a human. And I have Hersey to thank for that. But man, some of I think I'm a masochist because the times that I think about at Hersey for whatever reason that I think are the most fun to talk about are just like the excruciating practices that we used to go through.
Right.
That everybody, it was so maddening at the time that it almost brings your teammates together, not even knowing. But just because of how hard it was to have to go through something like that, you grow closer to your teammates as a result. And I remember running down and backs on full court at the end of practices for Hersey, where everybody has to make 2 free throws in a row, and if anybody misses, you either get on the line and do 1 down and back or 2, and we don't stop until there's no time limit. We stop when everybody hits 2 free throws in a row, which some days we got through it with a couple sprints, and other days we were there for an extra hour and a half just running wind sprints. And I was a bigger fella back in the day, so I didn't particularly love that part, but I don't know. For whatever reason, those are some of my that and the pasta parties before games, like Thursday nights for football and occasionally for basketball. We'd get together as a team, and you kind of just enjoy the company of one another, get to hang out, get to let loose a little bit in season, and prepare for the game the next day.
Yeah, and I think one thing I always tell our guys is like the lessons of the game are more important a lot of times than the events that occasion them. Learning or listening to you talk about teamwork and collaboration so positively is something that every student athlete is going to need, but every student is going to need too, in that ability to work within a good team environment and then to help raise the standard when it's perhaps not a healthy team environment at some point along the journey, which I think is key. And you obviously alluded to that. Once again, Tom, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Subscribe to @HerseyHoops on Twitter or Instagram for live episodes of the network, which can also be found on YouTube, Spotify, or SoundCloud. Again, thank you, Tom. We appreciate your time, and thanks for all the advice and insight that you shared with us today.
You bet, Austin. Go Huskies.
All right.
Check it out.
Hit you with no delaying, so what you saying, yo? Silly with your ice, grilly with the dilly, yo. When I be on the mic, yes, I do my duty, yo. While up in the club like we while in the studio. You know when to violate, baby, really and truly, yo. My main thug, villain ain't Julio, he moody, yo. Type of